Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to People and Performance, the process to building a great business. So it'll be myself, Mark Carnigan, and Hamad, who's going to talk about data analytics later. It's 45 minutes where we'll take you through a presentation, and then we'll also have a 15-minute Q&A at the end. So hopefully you can all see my screen and hear me. Yep. So the first thing is, could you put yourselves on mute, please? So there's no interference. And then throughout what we're talking about, if there's any comments or questions you want answered at the end, please put them in the chat and we'll definitely cover them. So let's start. So I'm not here to teach you anything. I'm here to make you think. That's all. If you come away from this with one really good idea to how to improve your business, I feel I've succeeded. But the reason I'm saying I'm not here to teach you anything is I'm here to make you think, because if you think something, you believe it and you act. If I tell you, you may comply, but you don't work for me, so you're not going to do that. But if you think that's something you believe, you feel it, and we'll cover this a lot more in today about getting people to feel things, and therefore you act on it. Think, feel, act. And I was looking for a graphic for this, and actually this is actually cognitive behavioral therapy. This is what NHS use to change people's behaviors. And what we're looking to do here is change people's behaviors. So if you don't admit to being on a webinar on people and performance, just tell everybody you've been on a cognitive behavioral therapy session. So let's look at your business. What if your team could be 10% more productive? Keep that thought and think what that means to your business. And we'll discuss it at the end. And how would you quantify that? And what ideas have you got throughout this webinar as to how to achieve that? Because that compound of increased productivity makes a huge difference to your business in many ways. So I was inspired to do this webinar by a McKinsey report which came out 2-3 weeks ago on how to deliver performance within companies. Now, McKinsey actually did some really interesting reports, but this one highlighted that companies who focus on both people, so developing their staff, but then also performance of those staff, have the best results to get better earnings, they've got greater resilience. And you can all read that, but one of the things which is key at the moment is attracting and retaining staff. So one of the clients I work with, they worked out that if they have good staff retention, by the way, if they kept an engineer for one more year, it added £90,000 to their bottom line per engineer. So if you can attract and retain the best staff and make them more productive, that is the golden ticket. So they looked at what do these companies, how do they deliver that? How do the people and performance-based organizations deliver that? And it is empowering challenge leadership style, widespread ownership and alignment, how you're measured, how that they innovate and collaborate, they develop their teams through coaching and training, and there's an inclusive work environment. And I'm going to cover all these points today. Because 2 years ago, I produced this, is when I looked at the clients I have and why they're successful, they have a clear purpose and vision. The leadership team is aligned to delivering to that purpose and vision. And then the staff actually, most of the time, run the operational side of the business. They're engaged, they're empowered, and they understand what success looks like. And then they have the ability and empowerment to change, because as you'll see later on, I talk about who really understands the business. Well, your team see most of the challenges out there. Therefore, if you empower them to solve those before they can get to you, you can focus your time on the things which really are going to be transformational for your business. Does that make sense? So let's start with people. So people are your biggest asset and the ultimate variable, as I'm sure a lot of you have seen. And Simon, you're smiling because we had this conversation. Yeah. So if you look at take a bird's eye view on your business, how do your team describe your business? Is it we are doing this, or is it they are doing this? Because what we want to get to is the we, that being part of something. If they feel that, they'll be more productive, they'll be more effective. So just think on that. How do your team describe you? Because you want to get up this hierarchy of engagement. So if you're never going to get everybody engaged, you're never going to get everybody on the right side. But you get as many people as possible up this hierarchy. So we're going to talk about how to do that. Because the more engaged, more productive they are, the less you need to do, and the more you can focus on high value activities. But firstly, you need to understand the people you have working for you. So I use DISC profiles. This is a DISC profile, which is a basically personality and behavioral profile of people. It explains a lot. Now, any of you who I've done this for, it will tell you why you don't understand people. Because if, for example, here if you're a high D and you've got an S or a C, the high D is typically it's an MD, it's an entrepreneur, and they will make decisions quickly. They're not afraid of taking risks. That's why you're in the position you are. But somebody is a C and S, they need the detail. So you'll go to somebody and say, oh, this is what we're going to do, get on with it. And they're going to go, I don't understand. Tell me the detail. And you're going to go, I don't need the detail. You don't need the details, get on with it. And I've seen this type of thing. But so understanding people and their needs is important. And you also need a diversity of type of people and thought processes, which is what this one actually shows. So I use these to understand my clients better and for them to understand their teams better. And as the quote says, it's from an operations director, it was better to understand him first and his beliefs and behaviors than enable me to actually help him be a better leader. And that's a serial staff. The better you understand who they are, what the communication styles work, the better you can communicate. So I don't know if anybody's read any Daniel Pink, some very good books, but he wrote one called Drive, sold very well. It's actually, it's a reworking of another theory, but he talks about intrinsic motivation. So think of this. If you give somebody a 10% pay rise, do they do 10% more work? Do they actually become 10% more productive? I don't think so. So you've got to use other methods, and that is intrinsic motivation, their own personal motivation. And that comes from three areas. Autonomy, the ability to get on with their job. Mastery, do I have the skills to do my job? And the final one is purpose. Why am I doing it? What's the outcome that's going to actually get me excited and motivated? The first two you can do quite easily. Purpose you need to tap into and you need to understand. And if you get that intrinsic motivation, you can get that extra 10%. So, because in the end of the day, hard work does not fulfill you without purpose. So, and you've read Simon Sinek, it's start with the why. And I'm going to briefly cover, because you need to get to the business, your business's purpose and the purpose for that person. So as a lot of you have read in if you've read Simon Sinek, it is what, a lot of companies know what they do and how they do it, but they don't know why they do it. And that is the purpose of your company. And that it also links it to the vision, because it's got to link down to a vision, because you're there to make money and build a successful organization. But what I misunderstood, and a lot of people misunderstood, is we are very simple animals. So I worked in the tech industry for 30 years, and I thought everything was logical, but it's not. We are an animal. So we're always trying to sell, for example, technical solutions to the neocortex, the logical brain. But if you want to get anybody excited about everything, you've got to get into the limbic brain, which is the feeling. It has no logic or capacity for language. But that's where trust and loyalty and all decision making comes from. Now, you just need to look at, when you look outside and see things, think that's not logical, but people are attached to it. Donald Trump is a good example. Vladimir Putin is another good example of how they've managed to tap into people's limbic brains. But there are lots of good examples as well. So what you've got to look at is, how do you get to understand people's why, their purpose? And leaders and organizations that inspire and communicate start with the why. So that's for the business, but then also tapping into individuals as well. Because if they have purpose, it will drive decision-making and inspire behavior and engagement. So if anybody looks at Timson, for example, they ensure that all their area managers fully understand the teams that they work with. So it's not necessarily how we would like to think of people, because we always like to think everything's logical, but it's not. You've got to tap into purpose. You've got to tap into feelings. And by the way, that is more so as younger generations come through. COVID has changed a lot of people's perception of work, and a lot of people will have more purpose or more why than ever before. So does your business have an engaging purpose and vision? Have a think about it. What would your team say about the business? So I work with various organizations, and there's a process to building a framework for engagement and empowerment of an organization. And I do that with teams of people, because as a business leader, it can't be just your purpose and vision. It has to be our purpose and vision. So engaging leadership teams below those to help develop the purpose for the business. Then it's we. If it's we, then we are all accountable. So it's developing the purpose of the vision for the business, the vision in workshops. What's our culture? Our culture, not your culture, our culture. And then how does that translate into behaviors? What are the behaviors we want to see? So if anybody's read any Damien Hughes, he's done some great books on this. But it is purpose, vision, culture, behaviors. And then the principles we work around, our leadership principles and our operating principles. So for Amazon, use this type of process. So the leadership principles, one simple one is, we disagree and then we commit. We have a discussion, we come to a solution, and then when we leave that room, we fully commit to what we're going to do. It's a framework. This works around for international companies I've seen as well. So if anybody's interested, this book, Gillian Tech, Anthrovision, because I know a number of you got international organizations, but still interesting anyway, is provide the framework, provide the rules, some basic rules that allow some cultural differences, but give everybody guidance as to what is required by them in behaviors, operational principles, etc. This is the pitch. These are the rules of the game. I'm empowering you to go and deliver. So then, you can look after people as much as you want and develop them, but you still need to perform. You need accountability and you need to challenge people to grow. So how do you do that? Well, the first thing is when people are measuring performance, typically it's KPIs, which have a small effect, but you still got to tap into other things out, like the ability to be engaged, the accountability, and other things. And they also include things like ownership, development, involvement, and the power to really deliver. And that's done in many surveys, it's shown that. So how do we get there? Well, the first thing on performance is, what the hell are you doing with your time? Because I've worked with lots of companies, and you go and look at what, from all levels down, what they're doing with their time, and it's more so actually with MDs and CEOs, often you're not in the right-hand side, right top of this quadrant. You're spending too much time in the low end of the quadrant because you want to help people. However, that's not transformational for the organization. So if I said to you, top right, high skill, high value, creates £1,000 an hour for the company, and bottom left creates £100 for the company, it's costing you £900 an hour to do the wrong things when other members of the team should be doing them. Now, if you then think that cascades right down to your organization, how much is it costing you that people aren't aligned and doing the right things where they add the most value? So everybody needs clear line of sight. How do they contribute to the overall goals you've set them? And what are those 3 to 5 activities they have to undertake that hit their objectives and add the most value? And then, how are they measured? So I'm going to hand over to Hemant.
Thanks, Mark. Hi, everyone. Just a brief introduction. My name's Hemant Patel, and I'm the founder and CEO of Anumana. We're a data and analytics consultancy that partners with fast growth organizations to increase their long-term profitability. And I want to talk to you about how you can become more data-led, which ultimately will enhance your business performance. As I'm going along, please feel free to put any comments or questions on the chat. We can cover them at the end, as Mark mentioned at the start. But firstly, I want to set the context. I think a lot of us believe intuitively that most business owners know that data and analytics can be beneficial to their business, but especially in my experience, it's seen as a luxury rather than a necessity. So how valuable is it? This chart is an analysis conducted by global management consultancy Kearney in conjunction with Melbourne Business School. And they've identified that there was a possible 81% increase in profitability available for businesses if they were to progress from a state of data analytics immaturity to industry leading. And that value is available on the journey through the maturity stages, not just as you get to the end. So what are leading businesses doing when it comes to data strategies? In a recent report by PwC, they analysed the actions and composition of the top 2,500 PLCs in the world. And whilst having a data leader on board is a relatively recent advancement, you can see that the first appointment made in 2013, you can also see the direction of travel is clear. These PLCs are appointing data leaders on their boards to help drive that performance and activity. Sorry, Mark, if you go back.
Is it?
Sorry, if you go back.
Oh, yeah.
So on the left, there's a chart just showing the percentage of organizations that have a data lead on their board. And you can see that the industries like insurance, banking, entertainment, it's almost half of the organizations that are treating data as a clear importance. One of the other bits of analysis was that 49% of business leaders in these top 2,500 companies in the world are planning to increase their investment in digital transformation by over 10% in the next 3 years. Again, clear demonstration that data is of importance to businesses. So how can you determine whether you as an organization can benefit from a data strategy? I want to get you to think about some of these questions, and if at any point you feel as though you're unhappy with the answer to them, then I'd recommend considering a data strategy. So, are you data rich but insight poor? Ultimately, are you sitting on a wealth of data but have no ability to understand it or interpret it?
Is that going forward? Sorry, Alan, is that?
Yes. Have you, how well do you know your customer base? Who are they? What do they want? How do they behave? Obviously, understanding their customer base, then you can create better behaviors and actions that will lead to more profitability. What about the way that you operate on a day-to-day basis? Is it through gut feel or instinct? Or is it utilizing up-to-date facts? With the pace that society is evolving, it's important to be in the position where you understand how macroeconomic factors and the overall environment can influence you and your business. What about your team? Are they just churning the handle, or are they spending time in creating value generative work? And what about your plans to scale the business? Do you believe that you understand where the limitations may hit and how you can overcome them? Or is that a cause of concern for you? And finally, for those of you that have an exit strategy, do you have confidence that you'll generate the value in the business, or do you think you're leaving money on the table? If at any point in that answering these questions you feel that there is an opportunity to enhance them, then I'd recommend that becoming more data-led can be an answer to you. But obviously, a lot of businesses aren't becoming data-led, and there's a clear reason for that. It is a significant investment. It is just a general example of a structure of a competent data and analytics function, with data and analytics being such a niche vocation. To progress in it, you may feel inclined to recruit a leader. Well, that's going to put you back at least 100 grand. And within the data and analytics roles, you have specific skill sets that are able to generate value for the business. On one side of the spectrum, you have your engineering functions that can curate your data, store it. But then on the other side are your analytics functions that can enable you to extract value from it. And salaries are ballooning. We're in an absolute bubble at the moment when it comes to data and analytics. With engineering roles, salaries have increased by 25% in the last year. It is a significant investment, and I appreciate that that can be a barrier for businesses. So how can you take control over your analytical journey and begin to demonstrate the behaviors of data and analytics without necessarily needing the technology? So I want to give you a clear and simple process to follow as a starting point to adopt that analytical thinking. I imagine most of you will probably be displaying most of these behaviors already, if not all of them. I guess the question is whether you're doing it systematically and whether you're doing them consistently. So the 5 steps that I'd recommend you considering are capture, learn, execute, analyze, and report. if we dig into them with a little bit more detail, so to capture every day, you and your teams are making important decisions. And every day, there are critical business outcomes that happen, whether that be in your sales teams, marketing teams, logistics. Are you retaining that information about those decisions and outcomes? Or is it lost? If no, then just start somewhere simple. It could be an Excel spreadsheet, and I appreciate that's the bane of existence for any data analytics professional, but still, what's more important is the retention of information and not the loss of it. It could be a CRM, just anything that you feel confident that you'll be able to start retaining that powerful information. If you have been, are there opportunities to enhance it, really relating back to these critical business decisions and the outcomes that they lead to? Next stage, learn. Now that you have that data and you're beginning to build a rich repository, spend time interrogating it. You're looking for patterns in this data. You don't need to have a math degree to be able to identify patterns. Ultimately, what you're looking for is there something in the data that consistently leads to the outcomes that you want? Conversely, is there something in the data that's consistently leading to the outcomes that you do not want? Which then leads you to identifying, once you've identified these patterns, to a position of action. What changes in your decision-making can you make to improve the outcomes where you're not happy with them? Alternatively, what can you do more frequently to lead to those better outcomes? Once you understand what that execution path looks like, plan, design, test, and then operate. Make those changes in the organizations that will then lead you to become more data-driven in your decision-making rather than impulsive. Upon making those changes, can you quantify the impact? What monetary benefit is driving the improvements in those decisions? Whether it be negative or positive, to be honest, I think it's important to really analyze the effect. And dependent on the changes in those rules, does it give you the confidence to scale these changes? And then finally, if you're making tangible gains through data-led decision-making, record them. This can provide you and your team confidence that the process is working. And also, if you're looking at an exit at some point in time, any record of financial improvement results in an increase in your valuation. And there was analysis by some of the CFOs around Manchester about what the top three effects of or top three actions to affect valuations, and on one of them it was KPIs and reporting. So with a clear strategy, where can you start? I thought I'd keep to the theme of alliteration with Mark's webinar, and I want to leave you with just a thought. Pertinent information presented well leads to powerful performance. So what do I mean by that? Ultimately, we all know that there's lots of reporting that is out there and that can help you with your decision, but it's not about how much information you present on the screen, it's about how well you can present it. Thoughtful reporting can provide you more activity and action than general reporting. And I'll give you a couple of an example of this. On this screen, you may have seen some sort of visualization that looks like this. Sales by category over time. You yourself might have asked your team to produce information to this, and generally you get what you ask for. It might be nothing critically wrong with what you see on the screen. It tells you that over time. However, is it giving you the ability to be able to act upon this information? Is there a better way to present exactly the same data in a more proactive manner, with just a little bit more reworking, represented the information in a much more effective way? It's exactly the same data set, but something that can lead to more actions. Already you can see the demonstration of sales performance comparative this year, last year. You can identify whether there are seasonal changes or whether there are differentials in performance significant to significantly away from the norm. You can quantify the concentration risk of your product categories, and you can see whether there's a difference in your trends, whether they're moving in the right direction or whether they're not. And this is just nonsense data, to be honest. I threw it up in Excel, but it was here to demonstrate a point. Just thinking about the way that you present is equally as important as thinking about what to present. And with that, I'll pass it back to Mark.
Thank you, man. That's great. Because what I talked to a lot of companies about is you need the data coming to you. A lot of MDs and department and leaders actually spend time going to find the data. So you need timely, up-to-date reports with the data coming to you, which allows you to make informed decisions, which is key. Now, one other aspect of transforming a business to be more productive is strategy delivery. Now, often people have great strategies, but what I find is that most of them are not delivered. There's a very simple reason for that. They're very much in transact rather than transform mode. So being operational in your company gives you a dopamine hit. I've done this, I've completed that. However, you need to get used to delayed gratification of the organization to deliver strategy. So how do you change behaviors to enable strategy delivery? So the first thing is use simple tools. So I use OGSMs, Objective Goal Strategy Measurement. And this is why Hans will be talking about how to get the data, because you need to be able to measure KPIs effectively. You need to be able to measure progress effectively. So this typically using a top level OGSM and then departmental OGSMs, and then it cascades down the organization to a more granular scale. And it's just a one-page, simple focus plan. And you take you work one step at a time, you work it, getting over one, you work it by quarters, and you deliver. But it's not just as simple as having this, because we've all got plans. A lot of them are very thick, they go straight in the drawer and nobody ever refers to them, which is why I like a nice one pager. But as I say, this cascades down to the whole organization. But you need accountability to deliver. So, to do this, you need meeting rhythms, and I'll come back to this in a minute. The drive, accountability, behavior, revision, delivery, which have set agendas, so things that align meetings. I don't know if for operational side, they're great. Last week, issues, opportunities, next week. So everybody knows what the meeting's about, what the agenda is, how they're going to be measured against their activities and KPIs, and it drives accountability. But you need to keep to the meetings, because what happens is everybody says, I'm too busy. So I'm not going to come to the strategy meeting, I'm not going to come to the operational meeting, and you lose momentum, and that is why you don't deliver strategy. There isn't the accountability, there's not the meeting rhythms, there's not a plan and strategy that people align to. And the other thing I said in this is, when I'm doing OGSMs, again, it's we. You have groups of people developing. Then everybody agrees, we're accountable, we deliver. And the reason you get everybody involved is this, the iceberg of ignorance. Now, whether you believe all the stats or not, this happens in all organizations. At the top, this is what you believe the problems are. And at the bottom, it may be something completely different. So that's why you get a very engaged and inclusive organization, because the executives can work on the strategy delivery and do the transformational side. The team below them, they see the operational problems and they can fix them and they're empowered to do that. So the meeting rhythms I tend to focus on are weekly one-to-one operational. Let your team mainly run the company. They know what the challenges are, empowered to fix those and to improve the organization. Then monthly meetings, major operational issues, but then strategy progress. You've always got to have the strategy progress in there, the measurement, make sure you're moving the dial. Otherwise, it just gets lost. And then again, quarterly strategy reviews and next quarter priorities. Evolve that strategy, deliver it, make people accountable. So then how do you improve your team's performance? The first thing to look at is process. Simple. Are your processes fit for purpose? But then it comes down to people. So there's two areas you can improve with your team: skill set and mindset. Now, any performance issue could be down to one of these or both. So it can be skill set and mindset. Skill set you can train. Mindset, much more difficult. I'm going to cover that. That's where coaching comes in and feedback. But mindset, you can only change people's mindset if they want to change. There is no superpower where you can change people's mindset. It is that think, feel, act. If they think they don't really want to change, but they're telling you they do, you will not change them. I can tell you after lots of experience. But if people want to change their mindset, you can change it. If they don't, you won't. So process, skill set, mindset. But again, coming back to DISC profiles, then if you want to change somebody's mindset, you need to know their DISC profile, because some people respond to support and some people respond to challenge. The other point about mindset, by the way, is, and we talked about culture just before, if somebody comes in and does not fit with your culture, and you know that very quickly, it's not a good fit for either party. And that can come down to their mindset. So training is what to think. Coaching is how to think. And that is when your staff become powerful. Think if you had more staff who could think, could make decisions, could innovate. How much difference would that make to your business? So I teach people a lot about coaching, but it is asking the right questions. Now, I've just put two quotes up here, one from Einstein, one from G.K. Chesterton. I think the second one, the G.K. Chesterton one, I see a lot. It's not that they can't see the solution, it's that they can't see the problem. And unless I understand and believe in the problem, I will not resolve it. So it's asking the right questions. And this takes time, and it also takes patience. But if you keep solving the problems for people, you will be the bottleneck in your organization. You will be overwhelmed. You will not deliver on the strategy and those high value activities that you should be focusing on. The other aspect in businesses, which I think is critical, is you need to accept failure. Failure is an opportunity to learn. You've learned more, I suspect, in your business life from things that fail than things that succeed. This is part of your culture. If you want people to innovate, if you want people to try new things, you have to accept that some of those will fail. So embrace failure as an opportunity to learn. Make sure people don't do it again, clearly, and I'll come back to that in a second. But if you embrace that things will fail, people will take risks, they will develop and they will innovate and they will take your business to the next level. And that is what you want, I assume. Because that's where things get a lot better. You become market leaders, get more profitability, and also you get more engagement from your team. So, keep learning. Things fail, discover what happened, what you need to change, do it again, do it better. This is from Sir Clive Woodward, and that's how the England rugby team won the Rugby World Cup. Always keep learning, keep failing, keep learning, keep pushing. And one thing which, as Brits, we're very, very bad at is feedback. And the reason is that it's seen as a negative, but it's not. Constructive feedback is vital. Now, if you look at the road sign on the right-hand side, why do these work? Well, when they tested these originally, I think it was in Canada, there'd been lots of cars speeding past schools, and they kept finding people, but it didn't make much difference. Now, they put these speed signs up with, these give immediate feedback, sad face or smiley face. That had a huge impact. It's immediate, it's timely, it's actionable. So people need feedback if they are to improve. So it should be constructive. You need to get them doing your organization that is constructive, it's immediate, it's actionable. And as a leader, you should encourage it if you want that as part of your culture. Because if people don't know they're doing things wrong, and what actionable thing they can do in a constructive way to rectify that, how are they going to change? Ignoring it or doing it, oh, you did a presentation 2 weeks ago and I didn't think this was very good, isn't helpful. But if anybody's looked at any talks by Kim Scott, Radical Candor, I suggest you do, but that's about feedback and the power of feedback, constructive, immediate, actionable. Help people improve, and that includes yourself. So, as we started off with, what would be the value to your business? Every member was 10% more productive. And think, what action could you take? What's the first action? Because you can only, don't overburden yourself, but what's the first thing you can do? And what is the quantifiable potential outcome? Because the first steps, make the first change. So if you want a people-performance-based business, I deliver coaching to deliver clarity, challenge, and accountability in leadership and CEO and MD development, strategy development, but particularly implementation. And what is so powerful is a great culture and good performance management, backed up by effective sales and marketing. But if you get the first three and you've got a good sales team, they deliver all the rest. And the idea is to give you an easier life in a better business. So we're now open to questions. Has anybody got any questions? Please come off mute. So, any questions? Because the chat's empty.
There's one from Wayne.
Yeah. Hi, Mark.
Hi, Wayne.
It's not a question, but I'd like to share some information with everyone because we've been working on this probably the last couple of years, and it's just some data not actually shared with users. Got it through. But when you're looking at this, and sometimes it is a lot of hard work, but there is rewards from it. And I use Plimsoll just to sort of see where the company is and everything. And I get a monthly report off them, and I've got one this morning, basically sort of looking at my peers and where we stand as a business.
Yeah.
So a bit of good news at the moment. We've sales growth in the last sort of year, 12 months went up 20.6%. and we came fourth in the peer group. But what's more exciting for me, the capital growth of the business is actually first, was increased 28%.
Brilliant.
So if someone is thinking about doing some of these things, you know, it's not simple. It's nothing.
It's not simple. Yeah,
But,
no,
but we are seeing results, so I just wanted to share that, just to sort of, you know, someone on the fence about what to do. So
that's great. Thank you, Wayne. Anybody else got something to share or questions?
How would you find the best way to disseminate the message through the organisation, Mark? Is it through continued sort of realignment, strategy days, team days? What's the best way to share that message?
It's got to be so. Danny, it's got to be face to face. Yeah, I'm a big believer in face to face workshops, feedback. So strategy development days. I think if you can get people want to be heard as well. So getting people still so powerful to get people in a room, get them understanding where you're going, getting their feedback, getting them involved in small workshops. If there's anybody has ever seen a TED talk called Draw Toast, I suggest you watch it. And that is about getting people in workshop with post-it notes and other things, get their ideas on the table, get them engaged, get them helping you. The ideas don't have to come from the top. Does that make sense, Danny? Does that answer it?
It does. One thing I am interested in is, when should you do it? Is it once a year, twice a year? We're in the midst of going through a significant shift in our direction.
Yeah.
So how would you recommend doing it? Is it every 6 months we do this exercise? Do we do a variation of different things across that time to keep people aligned with what the vision and mission is of the company?
If it's a significant shift, I would do it quarterly. I know companies who do it quarterly. But definitely with your leadership team, quarterly, as I've said in the presentation, quarterly workshops, spend time, you know, a day, 2 days, how long you think is valuable to get that message across, to get people engaged. So I know other companies who do things like the gathering, which is once a quarter. Then it also depends on how dispersed people are. Are they countrywide? Are they? Where are they? So it just depends. Can discuss it further, but it's you know, it depends how much change is happening. The more change is happening, the more often you do it.
Mark, I think my experience, and I'm really struggling with it at the minute, is I like management meetings every month.
Yeah.
Board meetings every quarter.
Yeah.
We're quite structured because we've got 3,500 people throughout the country.
Yeah.
So important that we stay together and we're close.
Yes.
And we all understand what everybody else is doing. But I think because of the way the market's gone, we've had most people, certainly my industry, because I work in the away from home industry, which was closed through COVID. Very quiet, and no chaos has arrived. It's so busy, and I can feel it in my business, and I'm getting quite cross, really, that I've got directors saying, "Oh, I can't make this, and I can't make that." And even my management team are, "Joe, is there any chance I can not come to that one, but I'll come to the next one?" And my answer is no. You know, if we are gonna remain strong and all moving in the direction, you have to talk.
Yeah.
Again, what I've just had yesterday, I had a 7-hour procurement meeting on Zoom. That doesn't work. I said I'd try it.
Killer.
It was normally everybody travels to here and we do it together, and there's 11 people in the room. We did it via Zoom to stop the traveling because everybody's so busy. We got through. I'd say that it was 30% productive, but normally I'm 100%. Everybody in a room, everybody's together. We then go out, have a meal, have a beer. So much is done.
Yes.
So I'm really hearing that what should be done, but I also got to take some respect that everybody's short on time. Everybody's really busy. My lot are. But I'm saying, look, as a business, as a priority, this has to take priority around in 12 months' time. We
Yeah.
won't, but we'll all be going in different directions and we'll have a much bigger problem. So that's, it's such a priority that we do that, and I do it probably quite a lot more than most, because like I say, every month I have my management team sat down saying where we're at, where we're going, what we're doing, what's right, what's wrong. And it could be an hour's meeting, it could be a 4 hours meeting, it's whatever's needed.
What I talk about, Joe, is how many things do you actually resolve in those meetings that if you didn't have the meetings face to face and resolve it would cause huge downstream problems.
Absolutely.
And it
And
takes
the-
far more time than the meeting.
Yeah, we found through COVID, because we did work as a supply cleaning and hygiene products to the UK. So we had a problem through COVID that we couldn't get together.
Yeah,
And so many things were dropped. And that's one of my issues, is I need to pull all that back in line. The processes, we're reviewing every process to make sure that what we did pre-COVID, it's just a case of, yes, we dropped it there, but it doesn't remain dropped.
yeah,
But we have to pick it all back up, and it's hard. I'm not doubting anybody's who's coming saying, oh, it's a struggle, it's time. Time is something nobody has, not anybody I'm talking to, everybody's busy. But you got to make time for certain things.
certain priorities.
This is one of them.
And if you don't, you just get into a constant struggle of fixing things.
You don't have happy staff.
Yeah,
Because
you don't have happy staff.
We've aired the views, had the problems listened to, you've sat in a management meeting, we've gone through everything, everybody's walked out thinking, I know where I am, what I'm doing.
Yeah. And also you want to read the body language.
Yeah,
You can't do on a Zoom call.
no.
Great.
An hour and a half, pop, 7 hours, I said, go on, we'll give it a go. Rubbish.
Yeah.
And then no beer at the end. Rubbish.
Yeah, I know, and it's that bonding as well creates the culture.
Yeah,
It's all
absolutely.
sorts of things, so.
Right on with maybe auntie. Oh, God.
So, David Marsden, you had a question?
Yeah, it was just a comment really as well. My role, as it's growing, we're hiring more and more sales and technical staff in international locations.
Yes.
So having the opportunity to actually get people in an office and have face-to-face conversations is very, very difficult. So the onboarding process is very, very important to us as a business. And most of the people that we're onboarding, we're having to do it remote because of the way that we're growing.
Yeah.
And I take reference to the last speaker talking about the problems about getting people in when they're so busy, because we're working with, I don't know, service technicians that might be on site at a certain time and our customer demands it. But sometimes what I try to do following a meeting, if they're working remote, is use our own internal CRM system to log all of the conversation that we have so that we can follow it up at a more convenient time. So we stick by the rules of having the meeting, but if somebody's on the road, it's very easy for them not to take notes and forget about what the conversation that you just had with your colleagues. So like I try to use a review technique of using the CRM, but the biggest difficulty for us is the onboarding process.
Yeah.
And the culture. I think trying to introduce people that don't come into your office on a daily basis about how the business works is a challenge. And I just wanted to ask to anybody, have they faced similar problems with like onboarding and raising culture in people that don't necessarily work in the office?
Anybody got any?
To be honest, I have 46 branches from Inverness down to Southampton to 4 in Southern Ireland, Isle of Man. I can't see them every day, obviously. But we do communicate all the time. And I know there's a cost to it, but what I do, and it really does pull everybody together, is 3 times a year, I'll hire a Marriott or a or anything, and they all come together. So on 28th March, I've got 82 meeting, beer, dinner,
No.
And it pulls everybody together and they learn so much and everybody comes. I always have a full house. I just had 140 at my last event. And said, right, come on, let's come have black tie, we'll have a band, etc. And you've got to communicate it when you've got, like I say, I've got branches all over the country. And I can communicate with them and they do get on bombarded. We have a forum that they can talk on. We've got CRM they can talk on. We have minutes that they can all read. And some do, some don't. But you put them all in a room. We present to them what's going on with the business. We engage with them. We put them into little groups. They engage with each other. And then we all have a meal. That's 3 times a year without fail. And they all come away buzzing and they're connected and they're
Yes.
ready to go. Then 3 months later, get them all back.
You
And
create
yeah.
belonging.
And I to be honest, I'm saying there's a cost. There isn't a cost because I always invite 2 suppliers to make a presentation and they pay the.
All right.
I've just taken 156 for rental for 5 days, £300,000. It didn't cost my company a penny. I just invited our suppliers, they paid. So use that.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you,
And
Joe.
David, the other one was that framework I talked about, you know, the culture, behaviours. Once people want to know the rules. And
Pardon?
people want to know the rules.
Yes.
You know, what's the culture, what are the behaviours, what are our principles as well. And once you've got that guideline and then as Joe saw, creating that belonging, it works, but you've got to get what works for your team, because there's different types of people.
Yeah,
Well-
I think the strategy in its normal sense doesn't change throughout the different markets, but really the tactics might. Because,
Yes, yeah,
you know, that people's barrier to business, people's perception of value,
Yeah.
people's perception of quality, it changes dependent on which
Yeah.
country you're working in.
yes.
And obviously
definitely.
when you've got different competitors in different countries where you might not have as much competitors in another one, so you've although they're doing the same job, they're also doing very, very different things on a daily basis. So I probably appreciate it might be a good idea to bring everybody together once in a while, because they could share maybe some thoughts that could help others.
We do regional as well, so I'll go up and get all the guys from Scotland in and do a regional, then go down south, get all the guys there, what you want to talk about, how you feel, how to think, let's bond. So we do regional if national,
Yeah,
if you couldn't do national, regional, it's just as effective, it's just a smaller group.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
any other questions?
That was a really good session. Thank you.
Yes, it was, thank you.
Thank you all for joining. Any more? Otherwise, we're absolutely pretty much dead on time.
Wow, well done.
Can I
So-
steal your slides, please, Mark, for some inspiration internally?
Yes, no problem. So
Yeah, I was going to ask that. Are you going to send these slides? Because I might use that with a few of my management team.
yes.
Lovely,
So-
thank you.
I'd like to thank you all for attending. I have a recording of this. So if you want to have a look at the recording, please let me know.
Cheers, Mark. Thank you.
Thank you again. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
Cheers.
Bye bye.
Right. Cheers.
Thanks, Mark.